All right. Well, good morning. Hopefully you've had a great morning so far. I have to remember I don't have to talk so loud here. I'm used to not being mic'd up. But there's been a lot of really great information this morning. I am Megan Burns, if you don't know me. Most of you know me, Megan Burns, wife of Ed and daughter of Karen and Tom. But I do have a professional life outside of that. I actually run two different companies. I run a company called the Naptime CEO, which grew out of my first company, which is Operations Strategy Consulting, of which I am the managing director. Excuse me. I'm also co-host of a podcast called Conquer Your Kryptonite with a friend of mine down in Mobile, Alabama. Just to give you a little background on myself, like Ed, I was at GE. I was there for 9 years. I survived a year longer than he did. And during that time, actually by the time I was 24, I had had my picture in Fortune magazine. I was a plant manager of a 65,000 square foot plant, and I had 175 people working for me. So to say that at a young age, I had to learn how to plan well is an understatement. Because GE gives you goals and numbers, and you don't miss your numbers. You come up with a plan, and you find a way to make your numbers and get everyone on your team to make your numbers. Fast forward a few years, and I launched my consulting firm, quit my job without a single client. I don't recommend that. And because at the time, Aiden was 6 months old. And I had a vision, Ed and I had a vision for our life that we were not going to be gone working 12 hours a day in downtown Pittsburgh with our children growing up in daycare. I know a lot of people rely on that, but that was not our vision. So I had to come up with a plan. My first year in business, which actually wasn't a complete year because Bronwyn was born, they're only 18 months apart, but my first year in business, I made $18,000. Which doesn't sound like a whole lot, except I was only working 2 days a week. I now run I'm not up to the millions of dollars that Casey is doing, but I do run a highly profitable business. We're probably the multiple six-figure range, but I have a team. And I built this business deliberately so that I could employ people who could live the same lifestyle I do. I only work 3 days a week. I travel. Some days are a little bit longer, but that was something that Ed and I decided. And we had to come up with a very specific plan so we could be and live on purpose. Now, today is New Year's Day. How many people here have set New Year's resolutions? A couple people. All right, hopefully you'll have some goals by the time you walk out of here. But actually, 40% of Americans make New Year's resolutions. Now, to put that in perspective, about a third or 33% of Americans watch the Super Bowl. So that gives you an idea of how many people set goals because they look at the year and say, I want to achieve something. I want to do something different. The sad fact is only 8% of people who make resolutions actually achieve them. Okay, that's really a small percentage. Now, as Christians, as Christ followers, we're supposed to be following after Christ. Now, let me tell you what, I don't know if he made New Year's resolutions. Probably not. He was Jesus. But if he set out to accomplish something, he accomplished it. He only had 3 years here in his earthly ministry. So he led a very intentional life. And if we're going to be like him, people should be looking at us professionally, personally, going, what's different about them? Why are they different than everyone else? What is it? Because I want some of that. So we need to be living an intentional life just like Christ did. I don't want to live life on accident. I want to be very purposeful in my life. So how can we do that and actually become, part of that 8% that actually achieves their goals? Well, you're going to listen to what a lot of other people talked about this morning about setting goals. And Pastor Matt gave us a great formula for how to create goals that we can get excited about. What I'm going to talk to you about today is, okay, just because you set a goal, even if you write it down, does not guarantee that you're going to achieve it, because we have to build plans to achieve our goals. When I quit my job and had 0 clients, I had to have a plan of how was I going to get clients? How was I going to get revenue? I was 65% of our income. I had to have a plan to do that. I couldn't fail. So the first thing that we have to do, and this may seem a little counterintuitive, and in your notebooks, I gave you all kinds of worksheets. But the very first thing we have to do is we have our core values. And you may look at that and say, well, that doesn't sound like strategic planning, Megan. It may not. However, you need the guide rails for your life. What am I willing to hold fast to? What am I not willing to compromise on? Because as you go through the year, as you work on your goals, as opportunities come up, there will be temptation to say, oh, well, maybe I'll do this just for this time. So you need to have your core values. What will I not compromise on? And I have some of mine here. My core values, and I have some verses tied to these, but children are a blessing. I will not sacrifice my children for the success of my business. And as a business owner, let me tell you, that's really easy. There's a lot of temptation out there. I could work all the time. It's a constant daily battle for me to be able to focus on them when I'm with them and put aside the email, to put down my phone and not be scrolling through as I listen to them. Am I perfect at this? Oh my word, no. Every day, sometimes every hour, I need to work on this. But they are a blessing. That's a core value of mine. Another is that to do what you're passionate about. Okay, Ephesians 4:1, to walk worthy of your calling. We each have a calling on our life that we are to walk out. And life is too short to sit in a cubicle doing something you hate. I'm pretty sure that's not why God put me on this earth. Integrity, we talked about integrity today. I'm really big on being authentic and earning people's trust. I'm not going to be fake with someone. To build each other up, Ephesians 4:29. I operate my business and in my life in a spirit of abundance, okay, not in scarcity. That if you give enough to others and help enough other people get what they want, it will come back to you. I think that was Zig Ziglar. Keeping my priorities in order, God, family, business. Ed and I, a core value for us is being debt-free. If an opportunity came up and it required us to go into debt, we're going to say no. Or maybe there's another way or another time, but that's just not something we're going to compromise on. So as you start looking at 2015 and what you want to accomplish, make sure you have your core values in place, because it allows you to look at that and say, no, we're not going to do that. And I'm going to give an example here. One of the things that we looked at was this past year, I had a company approach me from out of state that wanted to acquire my firm. And we went through like 4 months of negotiations back and forth. The company was based out of Virginia. They wanted to acquire the firm, my team, and there was a lot of discussion. But we got to this one critical point. They wanted me to stay on as a senior executive for 3 years, but here's the catch. I would have to travel 100% of the time. I would leave on Sunday night, fly out, come home maybe Thursday night, or I'd fly out Monday morning and come home Friday. Well, after 4 months, I was like, man, I wish I knew this in the first week, because I could have just said no. And even though the compensation package that they were willing to offer in terms of the buyout and the 3-year compensation plan, it was really attractive. It was really nice. And if I didn't have my core values set, I could have easily said, oh man, because Ed and I were working on paying off our mortgage. Like, I could pay off our mortgage in one fell swoop and have some money to save yet. But when I looked at, well, my core value is I don't work more than 2 to 3 days a week. I want to be home every day to get my kids on and off the bus. That's important to me. I want to be there to send them off and see how their day was. So it was really easy to look at that and look at my core values and say, no, this is not the right business deal at this time for our family. So work on your core values, write them down. Don't just have them in your head. If there's a verse that you're standing on in alignment with that, put a notation next to that, because it's going to help you when those temptations come up to be able to make a wise decision and not just, get sucked in on something that maybe you shouldn't. The next thing we're going to do, once you have your core values, and you've followed what Pastor Matt said about setting goals, is I want you to take those goals, because you're probably going to have more than just one of them. Pastor Matt has about starting a business. I have some goals about what I want to do with my speaking business, the Naptime CEO, what I want to do with my consulting firm. I have some personal goals that I have. But I want you to turn them into a vision narrative. Now, you may not have anyone heard of a vision narrative before? Okay, just a couple people. A vision narrative is a little bit more expansive than just what is your vision for your life. And Napoleon Hill, in his book Think and Grow Rich, alludes to this, where he talks about vision and creating a vision that you can get excited about. But a vision narrative, I want you to write out, and this could be multiple paragraphs. I know in the worksheet we only gave you a couple lines, but descriptive. What does your life look like? What does it feel like? Because you need to have an emotional connection to it. So for me, I actually do one of these for 1 year out. I also do 3 to 5 years out. Actually, only 3 years. I can't really think 5 years out. But 3 years out, what does my life look like? And I've done these where I say, okay, I wake up after being rested for 8 hours of sleep. I get to get my children breakfast in the morning and send them off to school. During the day, I balance my time between taking care of a home to make it organized and comfortable for my family, keeping myself healthy by going to the gym and working out. I spend time answering emails, creating content, whether it's recording podcasts, writing blog posts, or developing new training courses. I email with my clients who love us and love working with us. I wrap my days up getting my children off the school bus and spending time with them and hearing about their day. We sit down most days as a family and have dinner together. And then in the evenings, we nurture each other's gifts. We're at the dance studio or Cub Scouts, but we're doing something to give back to our community and to develop what they care about. That's my vision. That's something that I have written down that I look at and think, I get excited about this. It gives me a purpose for what I'm doing. When I do have to travel and I'm gone for 3 or 4 days at a time, I think, and Ed knows, there are times I'm like, I really don't want to go on this trip. I don't want to get up at 5 in the morning and drive 2.5 hours. But I love my clients. And I know why we're doing that. And I can go back to that narrative and put myself in that day. And what does it feel like? What do I get excited about? You can almost like smell and taste and touch and all those senses about what my life looks like. And so I want you to do that. I want you to take some time between now and Sunday to write down your core values and take some time and do your 1 year vision narrative. When we're here next year, January 1st, 2016, what do you want your life to look like? What do you want it to feel like? What do you want all of those, your relationships to look like, your financial life, your professional life to be like? But write that down and be very descriptive. Because if you have that emotional connection to it, then you're much more likely to execute on it. So once you've written your vision narrative, now we can get to the nuts and bolts. So if you look in your handouts here, I have some major goals. So this is looking at when you look at your goal that you set up, and Pastor Matt has one for his video production business. What are the things that you have to do to achieve that goal? One of my goals for this year is to actually write a book and have it published. Okay, I can't be the only author in the house. And it's something that's been on my heart for several years, but I just haven't focused on it. So I decided that this was the year that I was going to focus on the book. And it's actually going to be the Naptime CEO, building a business that enables the life that you love. And so what are the must-do projects that I have to execute on to have this book? So I need to come up with a marketing plan for it. Okay, that's one of my key projects. I have to actually write the manuscript. Okay, that's kind of important. I need to come up with a cover design. I need to find and have the book edited. So these are like all separate, different major projects that I need to do. The reason for doing the book is to enable speaking, allowing me to reach more people. And there's some should-dos that would go along with it. Like, it would be really nice to come up with a workbook and home study program to go along with that. Casey's like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I would recommend that. And I have a bunch of should-do projects, but when I prioritize them, these are the things I absolutely must do to hit my goal of publishing my book by the end of the year. And then here's some other things that, depending on if I get ahead of schedule, that I should begin executing on. For some of you, a really popular goal for a year is get healthy. I want to get healthy by the end of the year. And so what are the things that we have to do? And actually, Pastor Matt would say, that's not a really good, well-worded. But we could say, all right, and Ed knows this one. I have a goal to drop a certain percentage of body fat and to achieve a certain percentage of muscle mass, which I'm not sharing publicly for the accountability piece. But then I say, okay, well, if I want to hit that goal of a certain percentage body fat loss, what are the must-do projects? Okay, well, there are some exercise things that I have to do. There are some nutritional things that I have to do. So these are the major activities that have to happen. They're like milestones, so that as you're going through the year, you can see, how am I progressing? If you have a goal of, maybe a different job, well, it may be figuring out, well, what field you want to go into, and having a new resume and the confidence to be able to interview well and speak professionally. So those are going to be your major goals and your major projects. Now, if you turn the page, I told you this is very nuts and bolts. We then start breaking those into our action steps. I'm sorry, our intermediate goals. I turned too many pages. Our intermediate goals. This is, what do I need to have completed in 90 days? Because as great as it is to think a year out, most of us cannot sustain the momentum or the energy or just the mind space to keep focused a year out. But if I think about, what do I want to accomplish in the next 90 days? That's something we can wrap our heads around, okay? So when I look at my first project, which is writing my book, okay, what is my major 90-day goal? One of my 90-day goals is I have to complete an outline. Okay. Another one of my major 90-day goals for the book is to actually sit down with one of my friends from Georgia who has published a series of books and learn about the publishing process. Okay, so because that's going to get me closer to this. So each project has these intermediate 90-day goals. And then it's really simple to then start breaking those goals into your action plans. And this is how we decide, well, what are we going to do on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis? So if I go back to my outline, I need to have my outline finished in 90 days. That's goal A of my very first project. Okay, well, how am I going to do that? Well, the first thing I have to do is begin identifying topics for my book. Okay? And I need to have that finished by the end of January. So, and once I finish the topics, then I have to put them into order and start fleshing out details. So I can actually, in this handout, say, okay, project 1, write a book. Goal A, complete my outline. Okay. List out all my topics. I'm responsible for that. I'm going to start today, and I want to finish by the end of January. The second thing I need to do is organize all of my topics. And I'm going to finish that by February. The third one is I'm going to start fleshing out some details for each of those topics. I'm going to have that. If I do that by the end of March, I should have a good outline. So now, can you see where we go from here? I can then take my action steps and say, all right, if I want to have all of my topics identified by the end of January, what am I going to do when Monday rolls around and I'm sitting in my office? Okay. I can look at that and say, okay, I need to start brainstorming. Maybe I need to do some research and see what other people have done. Okay. Again, we can do this with if you have a career-focused goal, or even if you have personal goals. Ed and I went through this whole process when we were looking at paying off our mortgage. Okay, that was a big goal. We wanted to pay off the mortgage by the end of 2014. So we had some intermediate steps of, well, what projects is Megan going to take on? What things are Ed going to do to hit that goal? And then we broke it down to our monthly budget, down to the, okay, we're going to the grocery store this week. What do I have in my budget to get for groceries? Being able to say to our children, who as sweet and adorable as they are, no, that's not in the budget. Okay, that's not happening this month. So we can break all of this down. So it's not a year from now, this is what I want my life to look like, and I have this, beautiful story, but I never make progress towards it. How can I break this down in a very tactical way to what I do on a daily, weekly basis? And that's what this strategic planning process looks like. Now, sometimes I realize that we can't always be as strategic as we want on every single day. Because like you, I have things that come up. Unexpected things come up, distractions come into the way, just those day-to-day living life things pop up. So one of the things that I do to keep myself on track is I make a daily 1-19-80 list. That may sound really weird, but how many people have ever heard of the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule? Anyone? Okay, a couple people, yes. The Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule, was actually developed by an Italian economist, Vilfredo Pareto. And he was studying, yes, that was his real name. He was studying the distribution of wealth in the Italian economy. And he discovered that 20% of the people controlled 80% of the wealth. Well, okay, well, that sounds great. What in the world does that have to do with plans and goals, Megan? Well, Peter Drucker, who was a very well-known business thinker and leader, realized that this principle applied into just about every other area of life. And he realized that 20% of your activity generates 80% of your results. And you can apply it to a lot of other things. Think about your cell phone. You probably call 20% of the people 80% of the time. 20% of the people give you 80% of your grief. So when I think about that, because I tend to be a very strategic person, think, okay, well, what are the 20% of things that I need to do to get me 80% of the results that I'm working towards? And And because I can't always think about 20, I broke this apart and said, okay, well, what are the 1% of things, the most important thing that I need to do today to get me closer to my goal? So when I make out my to-do list at the beginning of the day, or some of you might do this the night before, list everything out and then look at what are the 1% of things that I absolutely have got to do to get me closer to my goal. And then what are the others that are in that 19% that are very important and are aligned with my purpose in life? And then the other 80%, if you get to them, great. If not, and they get pushed off to the next day, not a big deal. It's not the end of the world. Okay. So that's how I got away from this, and I'm going to commit to doing it again this year, is I actually would write them down on a 3x5 index card, which is not very high tech and it doesn't sound really fancy, but you know what? I can stick it in my back pocket. And so when I'm running around during the day, if I can always pull out my index card and say, okay, what am I working on? Because I like lists. I like crossing things off my list. And I'm the kind of person that if I've done something and it's not on my list, I will put it on my list just so I can cross it off. Yes, okay? And so that's how I run my day. So that I'm very purposeful. Now, do things come up? Do I get a call from the nurse's office saying, your son is in here because he doesn't feel well and you have to come pick him up? Oh man, I had a conference call scheduled. I had this scheduled. I was going to try and do like 16 other things. And you run into those interruptions. But if I go back to my core values, which says children are a blessing, I'm not going to call my mother and say, can you please pick up Aiden from school because he's not feeling well so I can work? I'm going to go get him. I'm going to bring him home, and juggle my schedule. Because that is those are my guidelines. They're the guardrails of my life. So that's how I do it on a daily basis. And if that's all you walked out of here from my session and you implemented that, you're probably going to be further ahead than most of the other people out in the US today. But I have one more tip for you to really make sure that you hit those goals that you want. And that is to have a quarterly review. Okay? This is something that, again, from a corporate standpoint, we do all the time. In my business, we do this. I do this personally. But you have to sit down once every 3 months at the end of those 90 days and say, how did we do? Are we ahead of schedule? Are we behind schedule? Did something drastically change and now my goals are no longer relevant? So you can make adjustments for the next 90 days. I'm going to pull up this example, and Allie used to work for me, and she was fabulous, but now she's being full-time mommy to Addie, who is adorable. When I did my strategic plan for my company in August of 2013, because our strategic planning year went from August 1st to July 31st. So we sat down, Allie, myself, another woman who works for me, Sarah, and we made our plan. And one of our goals for 5 years was to become $1 million company. So we had some goals of what we were going to do in the next year to get us there. And it was great. We had the plan, we had everything laid out, what we were going to do, if we were going to grow, who we were going to hire, who we were going to bring on by contract. And when we came in for our next 90-day review, Sarah and Allie both came to me and said, we're both pregnant. We're both due on the exact same day. I don't know how in the world that happens, but that was, they live like 3 hours apart from each other. And I was like, okay, 2/3 of my company is going to be off on maternity leave come, June 15th? June 15th of 2014. All right, I think we need to adjust our strategic plan because those things come up, okay? So you need to have a quarterly review and just say, what do we need to change? What do we need to adjust? What do we need to modify? I actually just went through this process with my Naptime CEO business. I was doing my quarterly review, and I was like, yeah, why am I not making progress on this? Why? I know how to do this. I track it. I teach this stuff. And I realized one of my goals was to do coaching as the Naptime CEO. And I realized I really don't want to coach people. I want to speak. I want to do videos. I want to host live events. I want to inspire and encourage people. I want to write a book. But I don't think I actually want to do one-on-one coaching because I still have another business to run that needs me. I still have a family to take care of. I still have a husband that I need to take care of. So I'm making some adjustments. My web designer is like at the end of her rope with me right now. But if I just plowed forward and never did the quarterly review, I could end up somewhere I really don't want to be. So as you set your one-year goals and you have your core values, which are the guardrails of your life, and you're working towards them and you're using that 1-19-80 plan to prioritize what you do on a daily basis, don't forget to revisit, where am I? Am I making progress? What's working? What do I need to keep doing? What maybe is not working so well? What do I need to adjust or change or stop doing so that I can get to where I want at the end of 1 year? And if you do that, and you actually follow the work, you will be amazed at where you end up this time next year. So, and I know you are all capable of it. So go and conquer.
Thanks, Megan. That was awesome. That was awesome. So we're done. But before we leave, I want to just bring out one point of what Megan said that really hit me and I really think could be exciting, is that vision narrative. Personally, if there's nothing that I got out of today except that one thing, then it would be worth it. To write your preferred future. Bill Hybels, preacher at a big church in Chicago, says, vision is really just your preferred reality. What is it? Sometimes we might be afraid to write that out because we're afraid it might not come true. And it's too hard. It's too hard to write something down and then face the reality that maybe that won't come true. But maybe it will. Maybe it will. It's not hoping and wishing, because hope's not a strategy. We just got strategy. And we've heard that if we commit our plans to the Lord, that they will succeed. So if God has put a vision, a preferred reality in you, I would encourage you, just write. I mean, nowadays we got these phones and you can like talk into them. You can just talk away and it'll write it all down for you. But like, just imagine, just get some time with God, get alone with him, and just close your eyes and be like, God, where do you see my family? Where do you see me? Where do you see me serving in the church? Where do you see me in the company I'm in right now? Where do you see me with my relatives? Where do you see me? And just let that flow out of you and create that narrative, that story. Narrative is it's like a story. Write your story as God puts that in your heart. And don't be afraid that it might be too big or too crazy or too impossible. Because when you commit your plans to the Lord, he will cause them to succeed. You know, the mind of a man plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. So thank you so much for coming. I hope you were encouraged. Take this and run. Make 2015 a great year. If you have any comments, do you have any success stories, anything like that, please email them to me, matt.fridge@hopealive.net. Just email them. Say, oh, that was great. You know, yesterday I did this thing and I heard that because Megan said that, blah, 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 whatever. Just email those things to me. I really want to hear what God is doing in your life. So have a great 2015 and we'll see you on Sunday. All right. Bye.